In a perfect world, the most exciting portion of a season of Big Brother would be the end game. It's the end of the line, after months of gameplay, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Unfortunately, more often than not, we, the viewers, see the writing on the wall clear as day, and what could have been an exciting gauntlet of blindsides and betrayals turns into a slow caramel crawl to the finish, waiting for the inevitable to happen. But sometimes, we get lucky. We get a battle where all sides have a fighting chance. And in these situations, it can come down to a freaking carnival game. But that's Big Brother for you. And speaking of Big Brother, if you enjoy BB content, consider subscribing because it helps me out a ton, and any sort of interaction helps YouTube share this out to other BB fans, so I greatly appreciate it. But now, back to the topic. Competitions are always important. Whether you throw them or gun for them, they are the first determining factor in how the game will play out every single week. But once we get down to the endgame, the importance of the competitions cannot be understated. I consider the endgame to start at the final 6. So the competitions I'll be talking about today start at the final 6 HOH and go up through the final HOH. It just seems right to me. Everyone gets to play in all the vetoes, sometimes the weeks get faster, and the numbers dwindle down up until there's just the 2 players left at the end. Winning HOH at this stage of the game becomes much more of a risk. One wrong decision and you become the #1 target the following week, where you now only have the veto to gun for. It's a game of risk, but it's entirely possible to win your way to the end at the final 6. It's also entirely possible to lose every single competition in the endgame and still come out with the victory. So today, we're going to be looking at the statistical best endgame competitions to win to get to the end of the game and be crowned victorious. I did my homework, so we've got some real numbers for you today. And in a stroke of rare fortune, you Canadian viewers are in luck, because we're going to be including the Big Brother Canada endgames in this video as well. So, without further ado, let's get into how important each competition is in the endgame of Big Brother.
This key right here ensures that I have a 1 in 3 chance at $500,000. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, I'm at a loss for words.
The way that I'll be going through this is by this. I've looked at all 29 winners through each season, 21 in the US version and 8 in the Canadian version, because we don't count Eddie here. And we tallied up their endgame comp wins. Through this, I can find which competitions have the lowest win rate for these winners, and through that, I will say that that competition is the least important endgame competition to win. Note, I'm saying least important in quotation marks because it's just based on how many winners have won it. It's not actually the least important. And when I'm talking about these competitions, I'll be talking about both the benefits and the drawbacks of winning said competition. I'll admit, this is probably very wrong. Right off the bat, I'll just say that winning the veto in the endgame can grant a player far much more power than the HOH that week, and doesn't stop you from playing in any comp the following week, which means that the vetoes could be a lot more important than the HOHs. But as you'll see, the numbers don't necessarily say that, which is kind of interesting, but we'll get to that part. So the way I'm ordering this is strictly just based off of the number of these comps that the winners have won. It might just make more sense to go through the competitions in the order that they occur, but we like chaos here. Remember, this is just for fun and a reason to look at these endgame numbers while we're in the midst of the endgame of BB23. So try not to think about it too much and just follow along as we look at each of the 7 endgame competitions. So to kick things off, the statistical least important endgame competition to win is the final 5 veto. Out of the 28 winners, since Dr. Will didn't have a veto competition in Big Brother 2, only 4 of them won this veto, a 14% win rate, which is well below the expected average percent, which would be 20%. Adam Jasinski, Nicole Franzel, Casey Clark, and Kevin Martin are the only winners to have won the Final 5 veto. The Final 5 veto is by far the second most powerful veto of the summer, which is pretty obvious. If you're on the block, you get to earn your safety and you instantly become 50% of the eviction votes for the week, which is a lot of power. But if you're not on the block and you win the veto, you have the opportunity for extraordinary power. If you decide to use the veto, you not only force the HOH to nominate the other person initially off the block, because they're the only option at that point, but you and the person that you saved with the veto are the only 2 votes to evict, giving you 100% of the power for the week if you work with them. And on top of that, you also get to compete in the final 4 HOH, which is huge. Think back to Big Brother 21. Nicole Anthony won the veto and was able to take her ally Cliff Hogg off the block and forced the HOH Jackson Mickey to nominate his showmance Holly. Cliff and Nicole now had 100% of the power that week, and had Cliff and Nicole wanted to, they could have sent home Holly, leaving Jackson totally powerless and in a position where he sent home his showmance on his own HOH. They didn't go through with that though, but the power was there for the taking. The Final 5 Veto is an incredibly beneficial competition to win, and I was surprised to see that only 4 out of 28 winners ended up winning that comp.
Congratulations, Nicole. You won the Golden Power of Veto.
I won the Power of Veto. Corey and I have all the power this week. Now we just need to decide what's best for our game.
Great. God, you killed it.
Moving on to the second statistical least important endgame comp, it's the Final 6 Veto comp. Out of the 28 winners, yet again, Dr. Will didn't have vetoes, 7 have won this comp, which is a 25% win rate, which is much higher than the expected average of 16.67%. Maggie Osborne, Dan Giesling, Rachel Riley, Ian Terry, Josh Martinez, Cody Calafiore, and Kevin Martin are the only winners to win this competition. Similar to the Final 5 Veto, if you're off the block and win the veto, you put yourself in a position where you can take someone off the block and then you and that person will have the majority vote for the week. You don't guarantee who the HOH will be forced to nominate, but they only have 2 choices, so it's definitely still a powerful position to be in. Would I say it's better to win the Final 6 Veto than the Final 5 Veto? Nope. Final 5 Veto definitely is better to win, but statistically, the winner of the Final 6 Veto has produced almost double the amount of winners as the Final 5 Veto, which I found pretty interesting. I also find it interesting that Kevin Martin is the only Big Brother Canada winner who has won either the Final 6 Veto or the Final 5 Veto, and he won both. But we'll soon see an influx of Big Brother Canada winners winning endgame comps, so get ready for that.
And it looks like Ian is seconds away. Congratulations, Ian, you have won the Power of Veto. Will the nominations change? I'm pretty sure they will. And who will be the second house guest to be evicted tonight? Stay with us.
Moving on to the third statistical least important endgame comp, it's the Final 5 HOH, and quite frankly, I agree. I think winning the Final 5 HOH is a huge risk. You do get to move on to the Final 4, of course, but when you enter the Final 4, you have a 67% chance of being in the nomination chairs come eviction night, and you only have the veto competition to try to guarantee your safety. It's a tricky spot to be in, and you definitely need to take a good look at your positioning before you gun for this HOH. Out of the 29 winners, 8 of them have won the Final 5 HOH, which is a 27.5% win rate, right around the expected win percentage of 25%. June Song, Evil Dick Donato, Rachel Riley, Ian Terry, Josh Martinez, Jackson Mickey, John Party, and, of course, Kevin Martin have won the Final 5 HOH and gone on to win the game. Like I said, it's a tough spot to be in, and your power as HOH is definitely extremely limited. If the wrong person wins veto, you could be screwed into sending home your #1 ally. On the flip side, though, you only need one person to vote the way you want to guarantee that you get what you want, as that would, at the worst case, force a tiebreaker, which you as the HOH would break. In my opinion, the Final 5 HOH is the riskiest competition to win in not just the endgame, but in the entire game of Big Brother. If you're a veto king or queen, or if you have great positioning in a house, the risk goes down a bit to win it. But if you're on the outside of the numbers or seen as a huge threat by the other house guests, it puts you in an incredibly risky spot at the Final 4. But that's just how the game works.
The answer was the flamingo. Everyone got it wrong. So Josh, you're the head of household.
Yes!
Now, at the statistical middle-of-the-road endgame comp, we have a shocker. It's the Final 4 Veto. What's crazy is that, without including Big Brother Canada, this would have statistically been the second lowest endgame comp to win if you wanted to win the game, which is insane. It's the Final 4 Veto. It's the most important veto of the summer. Out of the 27 winners, Dr. Will and Lisa didn't have this comp. Only 9 have won the Final 4 Veto, which is a 33% win rate. However, that is higher than the expected average of 25%. But what's nuts is that only 5 of the 9 were from Big Brother US. And what's even crazier is that before Big Brother 20, only 2 winners had won the Final 4 Veto. Hayden Moss, Andy Herron, Casey Clark, Jackson Mickey, Cody Calafiore, John Party, Nick and Phil Piquet, Kevin Martin, of course, and Dane Rupert have won the Final 4 Veto and gone on to win the game. That means that in the US, only 26% of winners won this veto, while 50% of the Canadian winners have won it. If you're not the Final 4 HOH, the Final 4 Veto is far and away the second most important competition to win of the entire season, as if you win, you're guaranteed to make it to the Final 3, and you get to cast the sole vote to evict for the week. You hold all the cards, completely voiding all of the HOH's power, and it is far and away one of the most critical competitions to win if you haven't already guaranteed your safety through the HOH comp. The best part about it is that it's usually a competition testing your knowledge of the season, so it can oftentimes even out the playing field and give most of the players a fair shot at winning if they know their stuff the best. And for that reason, along with it being such a crucial comp in general, it's one of my favorites of the season. I'm truly shocked, though, that this isn't like the number 2 statistical best comp to win, and that so many Final Four veto winners have failed to win the game. It's just a very surprising statistic to me.
Congratulations, John! You won the power of veto!
Oh my God!
Oh! Wake up, Tanner! Wake up! Your boy's going final 3!
Interestingly enough, with only 3 competitions left, we only have HOHs. And now, finally, we can start talking with the glass half full. The third best statistical endgame competition to win, just barely losing to the second best, is the Final 6 HOH. Of the 29 winners, 11 have won the Final 6 HOH, a 38% win percentage, absurdly higher than the expected average of just 20%. Once again, though, we see Big Brother Canada beasting this percentage, as only 6 US winners have won this, while 5 Canadian winners have won the Final 6 HOH. That means that 62.5% of all the Canadian winners have won the Final 6 HOH, which blows my mind. Of all the winners, Drew Daniel, Adam Jasinski, Hayden Moss, Derek Levasseur, Steve Moses, Cody Calafiore, Jillian, Sarah Hanlon, Nick and Phil Paquette, Dane Rupert, and Tashawn Carter-Newman have won this comp. This is one of my personal favorites to win, as it takes away having to fight for the risk that is the Final 5 HOH. It gives you an opportunity to get a big threat out that could possibly take you out at the Final 5. It helps you solidify some endgame deals with the other players, and oftentimes, the Final 6 happens to be a double eviction. So winning safety during that is a huge advantage, because if you're vulnerable during a double eviction, you don't have the luxury of time to make deals or change people's minds if they want to get you out. So overall, I'm totally cool with this being the third statistical best endgame comp to win.
Which means the answer is false. The bleeped out word, as you heard, was kisses, and it also means a big congratulations to Derek. You are the new head of household.
Now, just edging out the Final 6 HOH, the second best statistical comp to win is the Final 4 HOH. Of the 29 winners, 13 have won the Final 4 HOH, a 45% win rate, much higher than the expected average of 33%. What's important to note, though, is that you have to take into consideration that 8 winners were also ineligible to compete in this competition, so the true win rate is actually much higher. Of the winners, Drew Daniel, Mike Boogie, Dan Giesling, Hayden Moss, Andy Herron, Derek Levasseur, Steve Moses, Jillian M., Sarah Hanlon, Nick and Phil Paquette, Paris Atashnak, Dane Rupert, and Tashawn Carter-Newman have won the Final 4 HOH. In my eyes, it's one of my favorite comps to win. You get a free trip to the Final 3, and as long as you don't win the veto, you get 0 blood on your hands. It's basically just like winning immunity in Survivor. The downside is, of course, that you don't have any true power this week. Your nominations don't matter, and you don't get to vote anyone out. You do earn some power back if you can also win the Final 4 veto, but you still don't get to cast that sole vote to evict, so it can have some downsides if you're trying to be a big power player at this stage of the game. But at the end of the day, it's just a guaranteed trip to the Final 3, and you still get to compete in that final HOH, so it's a great comp to win in the endgame.
Winning this HOH gives me a great sigh of relief because I know I'm guaranteed a shot at the Final 3. It's beyond words. I feel like I've actually won the show.
The truth is, HOH, it's not that important. I'm not concerned at all about nominations for 2 reasons. 1, Mike Boogie's not going to nominate me. 2, even if he did, it wouldn't matter. Whoever wins POV, that's who has all the power this week.
But now, we're down to our last competition, and to hopefully nobody's surprised, the best competition to win in the endgame is, of course, the final HOH. The expected average percent of players to win this comp would be 33%, but a whopping 69% of players have won the final HOH, with 20 out of the 29 winners winning this competition. It's obviously the best comp to win, as you guarantee your spot in the final 2, and you get to pick who goes to the end with you. It's a win-win. It is by far the most power you can get in the game, and it's been the deciding factor on who wins a season on so many occasions. Of all the winners, these players have won the final HOH. Lisa Donahue, Drew Daniel, Mike Boogie, Evil Dick Donato, Dan Giesling, Jordan Lloyd, Hayden Moss, Rachel Riley, Ian Terry, Andy Herron, Steve Moses, Josh Martinez, Casey Clark, Jackson Mickey, Cody Calafiore, John Party, Kevin Martin, Paris, Dane Rupert, and Tashawn Carter-Newman. It makes total sense the final HOH is the best comp to win in the endgame, as it also can be a move on your resume if you can get out that top threat in the game right at the very end. Sometimes it doesn't matter how good of a game you play. If you can't win that final HOH, you have no power, and it can all end in an instant.
She just kept saying, is that all you got? I birthed 2 babies, I can handle this.
The final head of household.
We did it.
We battled every single step of this game. Dude, you dominated this game. I have to evict you, Dimitri.
Thank you, Kevin. Dimitri, you have been evicted. Please say your goodbyes.
And with that, we've gone through all the endgame comps, but after calculating all these numbers, it would be a shame if I didn't do something fun with it. So here are a bunch of fun facts that I accumulated about the endgame comps, with some numbers thrown around in there too. Since we were just talking about the final HOH, here's a fact about that. Of the 29 winners, 26 of them made it to Part 3, with only Maggie, Jillian, and Sarah Hanlon sitting out of Part 3. But they were still brought to the Final 2 and won the game. Of the 26 winners that made it to Part 3, 10 of them won Part 1 and 16 of them won Part 2, making Part 2 the statistical better part to win between Parts 1 and 2, for some reason. Obviously that doesn't actually matter, but just thought it was fun. The highest number of endgame competitions you could possibly win is 6. The Final 6 HOH, Final 6 Veto, Final 5 Veto, Final 4 HOH, Final 4 Veto, and then the Final HOH. Nobody has done this, ever. However, not every player is even capable of doing this. If you're the HOH the round right before the Final 6, the most amount of endgame comps you can win now is only 5, because you can't compete in that Final 6 HOH anymore. This situation happened to Kevin Martin, who, of course, then went on to win all 5 comps he was eligible to win, becoming the only player in Big Brother history to have a 100% win rate during endgame competitions.
Yes! Yes!
That's for you, Bruno.
Yes!
Congratulations, Kevin! You have won the power of veto. I need you all to...
Kevin, you're the only one who got it right. You are the new head of household. Yes! Yes!
Good job, buddy.
Good job, Kev.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Thank you so much.
Kevin, you are the final HOH of this season. Congratulations.
It's like a funeral in the house. Every time I win something, I love it. I love it.
When tallying up the number of endgame comps each winner had, this is what we get. Out of all 29 winners, only one has won 0 endgame comps, with that of course being Dr. Will. 5 winners have won only 1 endgame comp, and all 5 were women from the US version. 7 winners have won 2 endgame comps. 4 were from the US version and were all men, and 3 were from the Canadian version and were all women. 12 have won 3 endgame comps, the most common number of wins among the winners. Only 3 have won 4 endgame comps: Hayden Moss, Cody Calafiore, and Dane Rupert. And only 1 winner has won 5 endgame comps: Kevin Martin, of course. Now, 0% of female US winners have won the Final 4 HOH, while 100% of the female Canadian winners have won it. Interesting. In Big Brother Canada, I told you all that 6 out of the 8 winners won the Final 4 HOH. Well, the 2 winners that didn't, John Party and Kevin Martin, were the Final 5 HOH, so they weren't even eligible to participate in the Final 4 HOH, meaning that every winner of Big Brother Canada who competed in the Final 4 HOH won it. A legitimate 100% win rate by those winners.
But what's best about that, Philip? I think Cassandra just threw that comp to us.
I'm really annoyed at Cassandra. I think she's kind of foiled my plans for HOH this week.
Although no winner has won out starting from the Final 6 in the US version, many players were 1 comp away from not only achieving this, but achieving much, much more. Although Dan Giesling didn't win the veto at the Final 5, he was either the HOH, the veto holder, or had the veto used on him from the Final 8 all the way until the end when he won Big Brother 10. Had Ian Terry won the Final 4 veto, he would have won safety every single week starting at the Final 9 all the way till the end game where he won Big Brother 14. Similarly, had Casey Clark won the Final 6 veto, she would have won safety every single week, also starting from the Final 9 all the way until the end of the game when she won Big Brother 20. And lastly, had Jackson Mickey won the final 6 veto, he would have won safety every single week, starting at the final 10, all the way to the end of the game. What the heck? That's just the final 10. Oh my god. Josh Martinez won the same number of endgame comps as Paul Abrahamian, the absolute competition destroyer in Big Brother 19. Speaking of Paul, they are 4 for 4 on competitions at the Final Four, as they won both the Final Four HOH and Veto on back-to-back seasons. Kayla Grant and Ryan Quicksall have the most endgame comp wins for anyone that's not a winner with 4. Ryan is tied with Cody and Hayden for the most endgame comp wins in the US version of the show. And lastly, which also helps wrap up the video as a whole, 18 of the 29 winners had the most, or tied for the most, endgame comps won out of anyone else on their season. So yeah, winning these endgame competitions are important. Whether it be for personal preservation or for making power moves, it can oftentimes be critical to win these comps to advance further into the game. I hope I was able to convey everything I tried to today about these endgame comps. If you enjoyed, consider liking, commenting, or maybe even subscribing. We're getting dangerously close to 5,000 subscribers, and that still just blows my mind, so thank you. For real. This means the world to me. And as always, here's a clip for you on your way out.
Hi.
All right, Mr. Spectacular.
What's up, house guests? Mr. Peck-tacular is back.
Swag. Okay, oh please.
I'm sitting here looking at Mr. Spectacular, and I look over and my girlfriend and her sister are drooling over the guy. Are you for real? This guy has no layers. He's got no depth. He's also like 5 feet tall.